In 1974, in the midst of a worldwide oil crisis, the small Pacific islands of Hawaii decided to build an energy pipeline. Stretching 3,000 feet below Hawaii's Big Island, the pipeline would extract cold water from the ocean floor and mix it with warmer surface water to create steam and then power. But the plan failed, never going beyond the experimental stage, and Hawaii was left with a deep-sea white elephant. But in 2001, a Japanese businessman, Yasuki Takano, heard about the Hawaiian pipeline and had a dream. If he could mine this water, it could be desalinated, bottled, and sold to the Japanese market as the purest liquid gold on the planet. Within a year, Mr. Takano's dream came true, and bottles began rolling off the production line, ready for an eager Japanese market. Mahalo was marketed as a health-enhancing elixir, older than Jesus, and with a pH level that mimicked blood. In just under 10 years, Mahalo water has become one of the most expensive bottled waters on the planet, selling in Japan for more than 10 times the price of oil. But Mahalo is competing for shelf space in a market that is now a global phenomenon. In just 40 years, bottled water has become one of the biggest success stories in the food and beverage industry.
The demand for bottled water has grown exponentially in the last few decades. It's doubled again, it's doubled again. And the bottled water companies see enormous markets, not just in the rich countries, but also in the poorer countries.
With billions at stake, the bottled water market is fiercely fought over by the world's multinationals, who promise us health, convenience, and youth. It is the ultimate commodity, natural, pure, and sourced at minimal cost. Its real value lies in its marketing and branding.
Bottled water is the most revealing substance for showing us how the global capitalist market works today. In a sense, we're buying choice. We're buying freedom. That's the only thing that can explain why you would pay money for a bottle of something that you can otherwise get for free.
With exclusive access to the world's largest food companies, this series tells the inside story of how big business feeds us. Told through 3 products that business has transformed from novelty into necessity: bottled water, cereals, and yogurt. This is the story of how giant food companies transform cheap commodities into hugely profitable brands. This is the story of the foods that make billions. "12 miles of deep blue water separate France and Switzerland across Lake Geneva. It is a neutral and peaceful oasis that divides the HQs of 2 of the world's most powerful and competitive food multinationals, Nestlé and Danone. These 2 giants are fighting for the global domination of one of the biggest markets in the world, the market for bottled water. Nestlé are based on the Swiss side of the lake and are the world's largest food company. With factories and operations in almost every country, they are called the world's food company. With a turnover of almost $100 billion, their global portfolio includes everything from Häagen-Dazs ice cream and Nescafé to Kit Kats and their global water brand, Pure Life. On the French side is Evian-les-Bains, an ancient spa town and home to Evian mineral water, the flagship brand of the French food multinational group Danone. Danone is also present across the planet, seeing themselves as the global leaders in healthy food. In 2009, their turnover was over $20 billion, with a portfolio that includes Actimel, Shape Yogurt, Cow and Gate baby food, and Evian water. And it is in the marketplace for bottled water that the battle between Nestlé and Danone is most fiercely fought.
Danone and Nestlé compete in just about every market in the world, and in many markets they dominate the marketplace. They have entered China, South America, North America, they're all through Europe and in Asia. Essentially, they are fighting to become the leaders in that category.
We want your soul.
But although both Nestlé and Danone are selling similar products, their global philosophy and business strategies couldn't be more different. From the beginning, Danone's Evian water has been sold as a high-end product with the promise of natural purity.
When you drink Evian, you are totally sure that you are drinking the most pure water of the world.
And purity Evian style is, according to Danone, created by nature and untouched by human hands.
When we talk about Evian, what we mean by purity is the fact that that little drop of water that falls on Evian is actually protected from human pollution, and then that drop of water is just filtered through the rocks for over 15 years before it reaches the bottom of that mountain, which is basically our factory. We're not allowed to make any chemical treatment or anything to that water, so the way it comes out is exactly the way nature intended, and it's naturally pure. We're selling nature in a bottle.
And nature sells. Last year, the world drank 1.5 billion litres of Evian water in 152 markets around the world. But there is a cost to Evian's success.
Evian has to be bottled at the source and packaged, and that, of course, all requires energy. And then it's taken to a port in a shipping container, and it's put in a ship and brought over to the U.S. Most people in the U.S. don't live at the port, so the Evian is trucked from the port to a warehouse, a distribution center, and it's broken down into the shipments and the trucks it needs to go to. And it's a tiny little miracle of the modern global economy. You can get a bottle of Evian in a little store in Kentucky, and so you have to believe that water from France is somehow better than the water they've already got to think that that's justified.
Justified or not, in the global battle for bottled water, Danone's Evian had been the undisputed market leader for decades. But in the mid-1990s, this was all about to change. At their rival Nestlé's headquarters, then company CEO Peter Brabeck had a vision. He called it Pure Life.
In all of our factories, we have a lot of know-how in order to standardize water. Because, for example, for the production of Nescafé, we have to brew the coffee before we can solubilize it. So we need water, and the water has to be standardized. So my question was then to our research people, as we already have a standardized water, cannot we reconstitute the quality, the taste, and the minerality of the water and have a brand that is a worldwide brand which is standardized? So it is, if you want, more an industrial product.
There is some science and some processes that are involved in making Pure Life taste the way it tastes. So yes, I've never thought about it as an industrialized type of product, but I guess you'd have to say because of the processing it goes through that it in fact is.
To make Pure Life, Nestlé had utilized a system called reverse osmosis, which had been perfected by NASA to provide drinking water for astronauts. The process uses a very thin membrane to filter out impurity and minerals. The result is distilled water. This is then remineralized to give it taste.
Pure Life water comes out of a factory, and it goes into a factory-made plastic bottle. it's been purified and denatured. So I think in a sense what you have is two ends of a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, Evian has gone towards nature, and Pure Life is going towards culture and technology.
Although Pure Life in the UK does use spring water, around the world the brand utilizes local municipal water sources. As a result, Nestlé have created a product that has one huge advantage over its rival at Evian.
Their bodies are 60% water.
We have a product that doesn't have to travel from Europe into the rest of the world with an enormous cost, and a brand that is a worldwide brand, which is standardized, and that would not travel in principle more than 250 kilometers.
Want to grow a healthier, happier family?
With transportation costs reduced to a fraction, Nestlé has been able to position its Pure Life brand as one of the lowest priced on the market.
Embrace the Pure Life.
It was now Evian's turn to look over their shoulder.
Nestlé Pure Life.
Historically, Evian was the #1 water brand around the world. And what Nestlé did with Nestlé Pure Life, they were able to develop a global brand that was not tied to a single source and could be produced around the world.
Como el agua purificada Nestlé Pure Life de una marca en la que todos confiamos. Nestlé.
So over a period of 7 years or 8 years after its introduction, it was able to become the #1 brand in the world. I cannot remember a brand to capture a global #1 positioning in such a short period of time in an established category.
Nestlé and Danone's battle to sell us similar products is one of the clearest examples of how, in our modern world, we pay for choice.
Some people think that bottled water is the high point of global capitalism, particularly the people in the bottled water business. I think bottled water actually represents a kind of caricature of the global economy. It provides people in the developed world with 20 or 30 varieties of something for which there is no actual variety.
And in the beginning, there really was no variety. The bottled water phenomenon began with one brand, a brand that was to define a generation. Its name was Perrier.
Perrier popularized bottled water. It made it acceptable, more than acceptable. It made it desirable.
But it was not always this way. When Perrier UK was looking to increase its sales in the early 1970s, it faced a skeptical public. Many questioned why anyone would buy water when you could get it free from the tap. Faced with such obstacles, they turned to the ad agency Leo Burnett for help. The resulting campaign was to change our consumer landscape forever.
The hunch we had, which was right, that you never ever wanted to explode the myth of this was just water. We were trying to write ads that were fun and celebratory, and someone said, well, the French for water is "oh," isn't it? And then someone said, well, the great expression for having a good time is "oh la la." And someone got out a piece of paper and a pencil and wrote the headline "oh la la" and put a bottle underneath it, and there was the first O campaign.
Marketing manager Venka Marshall Foster knew that Leo Burnett had found a way to release the essence of Perrier.
The water comes from France, of course, but the English and the French aren't that good friends. So we thought, rather than saying this is from France, we sold this much more vague feeling of it's French, Frenchness. Frenchness is good, it's chic, it's everything that we English maybe would like to be.
The O campaign was a marketing coup d'etat, and sales went through the roof. From 12 million bottles in 1980 to 152 million by the end of the decade.
By the late 80s, we had a phenomenal success on our hands. In some ways, it was bigger than we'd even planned, which is just incredible for a product that, opened a market which was essentially cynical about buying bottled water in the first place. It was fantastic.
At the height of the 1980s, Perrier had become the aspirational drink for the new yuppie generation. a group that had moved from beer to wine, and from wine, increasingly, to water. The liquid lunch was a thing of the past, and drink driving was unthinkable.
Perrier became a badge. When you held the Perrier bottle up, it said something about yourself, said you were sophisticated, you understood what was happening in the world. It was a perfect beverage for the young, up-and-coming business executives, the trendsetters.
Perrier's business strategy in the UK mirrored that in the US. Its American MD, Bruce Nevins, sold Perrier on a ticket of exclusivity, Frenchness, and style.
Well, we first started placing the product in certain restaurants, bars, and discos in the key markets, which were basically New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco. People were making a statement in terms of, you know, I'm drinking Perrier, a French product. It was something of an association in terms of their lifestyle. It was a reflection of their taste and those kinds of things.
Bruce Nevins is the godfather of the bottled water industry in the U.S. And Bruce Nevins had what turns out to be one of those remarkable insights that seems kind of prosaic in retrospect. He realized that Perrier was a beverage, that you could position it exactly the way you positioned a martini or a bottle of Coke or a mixed drink. It wasn't just water, it was something to order in a restaurant and have with your meal.
Bruce's strategy paid off. Between 1980 and 1989, Perrier US went from 25,000 cases to 10 million. The story was the same in the UK. Perrier had turned water, a basic commodity, into a market.
It's hard to imagine how we've come to the point where water has become not a public good, but a thing to be commodified and put in bottles and sold. I think that's, frankly, a testament to the incredible ability of commercial industry to sell us anything. To sell us something as fundamental as water requires pretty special skills.
Where Perrier had made the buying of bottled water acceptable to a largely metropolitan elite, Mrs. Thatcher made the buying of tap water a necessity for the rest of us. In 1989, the Conservative government sold Britain's public water supply to private utility companies. All households in England and Wales now had to pay a separate bill to have a shower, fill a kettle, or drink a glass of water. Tap water also now had a price in the market.
For most of our history, British people have just expected water to be something that's free. When Margaret Thatcher came along, in England at least, with water privatisation, people began to see a separate bill. And I think that once you start paying for domestic tap water, then you think, well, it's not such a leap then to think, well, I might as well buy bottled water. Why not pay for that? It's not so different.
With the privatisation of water, the perception of all water had changed. And at the heart of this change was Perrier, the perfect symbol of Thatcher's Britain. The brand seemed unstoppable, but on the 10th of February 1990, news came through that there was a little problem.
The first thing I knew about the Perrier crisis was on a Saturday morning when I got the call from the States saying, Wenche, there's nothing to worry about. They found some benzene, but it was only in one state, and it would be containable, so not to worry, Wenche.
But Perrier's problem was not containable. Benzene is carcinogenic, and within 24 hours of its discovery, Perrier and the US decided to recall the product. The UK was forced to follow suit.
French company Perrier is withdrawing all bottles of its mineral water from sale throughout the world. It follows the discovery of traces of the chemical benzene.
Tests show benzene levels at or above World Health Organization guidelines.
The benzene crisis was a complete bolt out of the blue. One of the things it demonstrates is that any product, any service is never immune from a real crisis. And who would ever thought a pure bottled water would suddenly be faced with potential contamination?
The problem with Perrier was less about the trace levels of benzene that were in the product, more about the fact that it shouldn't be there in the first place. You know, we sold Perrier on the basis of its purity and quality, and you live by the sword, you die by the sword, and that's what happened to us.
The Perrier recall was one of the biggest in the history of the food and beverage industry. Within 48 hours, 70% of all sparkling mineral water disappeared.
I think that I cannot describe how personally I felt about it. It sounded a bit crazy, it was like a baby had been torn away from me. That's how I felt. We had worked so hard and we built it so successfully.
Following the recall, Perrier was off the shelves for 8 long weeks. Time enough for its competitors to circle like sharks.
When Perrier had their recall, Highland Spring absolutely exploited that to the full. It gave us an absolute straight entry into delivery into the market where their product was being taken away. So we had a fabulous opportunity right there and then.
But Highland Spring had another advantage over their foreign rival. Highland Spring was a local British brand, serving a local British market, with both still and fizzy water.
In 1979, when the Highland Spring Company was launched, the market was predominantly led by the French brands, for instance, Perrier and Evian. But as soon as Highland Spring was launched, we got quite a significant market share. We picked up almost 20% market share in our first year. So there was definitely a desire from the British public for a British brand.
The consumer desire to buy locally sourced produce was promoted by the then Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, with the slogan, "Buy British."
And it just would help if people, when they're buying, would buy British as much as they can.
By tapping into the consumer desire to buy homegrown produce, Highland Spring had a ready market. But in order for the brand to develop further, they needed a leader with a vision. Enter, stage left, Joe Beeston.
When Joe Beeston joined the business, he came from an environment of brands. So he was a marketeer, and what he brought to the business was the opportunity to develop marketing strategy for the first time. It became clear that we had a set of crown jewels sitting in the warehouse that just needed a little bit of attention to enable them to be unlocked.
To unlock the Highland Spring jewels, Joe Beeston embarked on a strategy of product placement. The worlds of British fashion, British motorcar racing, and British snooker were all targeted. But Highland Spring's crowning glory was provided by one of Joe's friends, the former Formula One racing driver, Sir Jackie Stewart. Jackie was travelling on Britain's flagship airline, BA, when he was offered Evian mineral water.
I was travelling in a BA plane and I got a foreign mineral water. I thought that it should have been a British mineral water. I got off the plane and I phoned Lord King, who was at that time chairman and CEO. And I said, why are we drinking foreign water? You should have a British one. And he said, let me talk to somebody about it and I'll call you back.
I don't think it took him too long to convince British Airways that it would be much more fitting for a quintessentially British brand to have a quintessentially British brand of bottled water alongside.
In the slipstream of the world's favourite airline, Highland Spring had become a major player in the rapidly growing bottled water industry. It now sat proudly next to the industry leaders, Evian, Volvic and Vittel. But as this market expanded, it also evolved. And where carbonated water had dominated, still water was now becoming the everyday drink of choice. In an age of instant gratification, still bottled water provided what people needed, exactly when they needed it.
People in general are more and more time pressed. We don't cook our own meals anymore. We eat prepared foods of all kinds. And there's nothing more appealing than a bottle of cold water at a moment when you're really thirsty. Cold water is, in fact, deeply satisfying when you're thirsty. But I think bottled water is one of those products that on many occasions when people buy it, what they're buying isn't the water so much as the bottle. That is, the package and the convenience at that moment.
And when we bought this convenience, what we were really buying was PET, or polyethylene terephthalate, the single most important innovation in the industry's history. Strong, shatterproof, and a highly valued form of polyester, PET is a byproduct of the oil industry. It is now utilized in the packaging of everything from pharmaceuticals and soap to ready meals. In years to come, the environmental impact of PET would haunt the industry and raise questions about its very survival. But in the 1990s, this was a revolution.
Starting with the introduction of the PET waters, the category started to explode. The bottled water industry before PET was essentially on the list of all beverage categories was number 7. With the advent of PET, bottled water jumped from the number 7 to the number 2 spot behind carbonated soft drinks. It started to grow in the 2 billion, 3 billion range every year, phenomenally high growth rates.
And these growth rates were yet further enhanced by the industry's persuasive arguments that they, unlike tap water, were selling us the taste of natural purity. In an ever more affluent society, the taste and origin of our food and water became even more important. This was the age of the foodie.
We know that British tap water is very heavily treated. There's a lot of chlorine in tap water, particularly in some areas. It doesn't taste as delicious as, beautiful, clean, crisp, fresh water from a mountain stream. And particularly, I think, in metropolitan areas, there was this feeling that the tap water wasn't that great. You heard this thing about it being through other people's kidneys X number of times. There was this question of taste. And I think that's then when the bottled waters were very successful in promoting themselves as purer, cleaner, tasting better.
On both sides of the Atlantic, the bottled water industry has capitalized on the themes of taste and purity to promote their brands. But they deny that the tap is their enemy.
We don't see tap water as our competitor. But if we're going to talk about tap water, it comes without a package, comes through miles of pipes, generally is chlorinated, and while safe, people may not like the taste and they may not want the chemicals. So the products I see are being very different. Now, some people want to say there's not enough difference to justify having this as a category, but consumers make that decision every day.
The argument of the industry, of course, is that they're simply satisfying a need. They're meeting a demand, that the public demands bottled water, and if the public didn't demand it, then they wouldn't make that product. And that's partly true, but demand is manufactured for things, and demand is manufactured for bottled water.
Evian. Every day is a chance to feel healthy.
Water is a blank canvas for the marketer. You can put almost anything into it. So water can be exotic, it can be sexy, it can be male, it can be female, it can be old or young, it can be almost anything that you want. So in that sense, water is a wonderful protean subject rather than something that's limiting because it doesn't have properties to get in the way.
Keep your body at its peak.
In the late 1980s, the French brand Evian recognized the growing health and fitness trend and exploited it to the full.
Evian was sold as a beautiful person's drink. The early Evian ads featured absolutely gorgeous people working out or just after working out in their skin-tight, sweaty clothes, and so it was a way of saying, if you want to be fit, if you want to be healthy, if you want to be attractive, drink Evian. And by drinking Evian, you will be those things.
And more. Bottled water, following the Evian lead, became the indispensable prop of gym life, while healthy hydration became the buzzword. Pure, clean bottled water now symbolized the healthy life we were all encouraged to lead. And as bottles of water became a part of our everyday shopping list, the World Health Organization gave the industry a gift from heaven.
The World Health Report was the first public document showing that drinking water is very important and was a key contributing factor into starting the health trend and helping bottled water businesses increase its growth.
What the World Health Report estimated was that it was normal for men and women to drink approximately 2 liters of water a day. A variation on these estimates then became guidelines that are still used to this day.
When we see recommendations which say you should drink 1 or 2 litres of water a day, it's important to remember that that includes all the water that comes in food and indeed the water that we get in drinks other than pure water. So the water that's in tea and coffee, even the water that's in sugary drinks, is all going to count towards that overall target.
To make the guidelines more palatable, they were turned into the easy-to-remember mantra of 8 glasses a day.
Many bottled water producers took the guidelines and translated them into the rather simpler 8 glasses a day message, which they hoped would have the same sort of weight as the 5 fruit and vegetable portions a day message from government guidelines, so that really consumers had an easy reference point for healthy hydration.
But whether these 8 glasses should be consumed from the tap or the bottle was left open to question by everyone except the bottled water industry.
The bottled water companies have capitalized on that notion that you needed 8 cups of water a day very aggressively. They've used that as a way of saying not just that you probably might need 8 glasses of water a day to be healthy, but if you're going to drink 8 glasses a day, you might as well drink the best water. And so they've used it as an edge to take a dig at tap water.
Linking a healthy life with the drinking of bottled water has become the key marketing strategy in the industry's armory.
Your life. La vida fluye en familia.
Most recently, Evian's sister brand Volvic, also owned by the multinational Danone, has targeted the message at a group that they felt were not listening. They were called men.
So welcome to my Volvic challenge. I've got to drink 1.5 litres a day for 14 days. Now that's a lot of water, but if it makes me feel better, then I'll give it a bash.
Ce qu'on a voulu faire, c'est faire comprendre au consommateur qu'il est très important pour lui de renouveler l'eau de son corps. Même si vous n'avez pas soif, vous devez boire, vous devez régénérer, vous devez changer l'eau que vous avez dans votre corps. Donc c'est une expression marketing pour expliquer une vraie réalité médicale.
Volvic's drinking challenge worked, and in the UK alone, sales of Volvic increased by over 25% over the period of the promotion. New consumers flocked to the brand, and some of them were men. The link between bottled water and the health and wellness movement was a marriage made in heaven.
Every time it rains, pennies from heaven.
Between 1990 and the turn of the century, global sales doubled from 50 billion to over 100 billion litres a year. With growth of over 10%, the 2 old veterans of the beverage industry, Coke and Pepsi, looked on, green with envy.
Be sure that your umbrella
Both saw a future market, there for the taking.
One of the great things about global companies is they see an opportunity and they take it. Pepsi was able to say, hey, if there's a new trend emerging, I can maybe get a leg up on the competition if I understand that trend and I develop brands faster in the non-carbonated space. And so Pepsi viewed that to be a potential for it to get a competitive, broader, more diverse portfolio to improve its position relative to Coke.
Coke and Pepsi's age-old rivalry was about to go into overdrive.
It's like the cola wars. One company jumps into one area, the other one will follow. Neither of them want to give the other one an advantage. If you look at their product lines, they match up head-to-head in every beverage category, every beverage package size, from vending to fountain. These are great beverage warriors, and they're not about to give an open playing field to their competitor.
Fueling Coke and Pepsi's determination to enter the water market was their own falling market share. With the increasing concerns about obesity, Both Coke and Pepsi recognize a consumer demand for healthy alternatives to their own lucrative sugar-filled fizzy drinks.
Well, if you did any kind of consumer survey and looked at what people drank, the #1 category is water. And then if you talked to any consumers about what they liked about water, they liked that it was healthy for them. And then I think the growth of water was a recognition that here's something everybody drinks.
And so Pepsi launched a new purified water brand that they called Aquafina. Sugar-free, calorie-free, and additive-free. Aquafina was the healthful beverage the American consumer was demanding. At the same time, it provided Pepsi with a head start on their rivals at Coke. They targeted Aquafina at the American consumer. This was no funny foreign water.
Evian and Perrier existed because they were European brands brought over the United States, higher priced, perceived to be part of a rich and famous lifestyle, very elite. And we thought the opportunity was to create a water that wasn't elite, that was the antithesis of that was mainstream, popular, fun-loving. You could say we were democratizing a European specialty product. You could also say that we were creating an American product.
And Pepsi's new water brand was exactly what the American consumer was asking for. 2 years after launch, it was selling 140 million litres per annum. 2 years later, that figure had tripled. But Pepsi wanted more.
We said, hey, we want people to talk about Aquafina as much as they're talking about Pepsi. So give us a campaign, and you know what? We want to put it on prime time. We want to put it on some of the big sports shows. We want to give it the status and the profile that soft drinks have traditionally had. So our strategy was very much to emulate what had built successful brands in the past, but to do it with water and to do it with a sense of fun and healthiness.
And Pepsi's winning strategy was further enhanced by their formidable distribution network. Aquafina was pushed into every US market available and soon became America's #1 brand.
When you have a great cannon, like their bottling system, you fire it. And when you have it firing on all pistons, that means they have thousands of delivery trucks, thousands of salesmen, thousands of busy coolers, thousands of vending machines, so they could catch up rather quickly.
Coca-Cola, unused to being beaten by their longtime rival, then launched their water brand. They called it Dasani. Like Aquafina, Dasani was a purified water using local water sources. But where Aquafina had targeted the mainstream, Dasani saw its market primarily with the female of the species, whose busy lives they promised to simplify.
Miss Johnson? I fixed the photocopier. Miss Johnson, did you hear me?
We primarily targeted women. Women were 70% of the entire bottled water market. Primarily 25 to 39 years old, living in cities and working independent women that had a very hectic life, and for this reason wanted to have their lives simplified.
But simplicity was not enough for Coke's Dasani, and they decided to steal a march on Pepsi by breaking the European market. This was to be one of the worst decisions the Coca-Cola Corporation ever made.
The mighty Coca-Cola Corporation saw Britain as a wide-open market for water, and if that market could be persuaded to drink that water, Coca-Cola then thought, OK, we've got the limeys, now we'll push on into Europe, and even the Europeans will be drinking Coca-Cola water.
In February 2004, Dasani was launched in the UK with a proposed tagline of "Urban water for the fast-living generation."
Dasani involves a state-of-the-art purification process which makes the water clean and safe, and then we add minerals to add a pleasant taste. We were very candid about this when we launched the brand in the media.
But what Coke was less open about was the source of Dasani water. It was Thames tap water, purified in their Sidcup factory in Kent.
The water industry has criticised Coca-Cola for promoting a new bottled water that's purified from the tap. Selling at 95 pence a bottle, Dasani has been launched across Britain. The company says the water goes through a rigorous filtering and is as pure as water can get.
It became clear that they were bottling tap water, and quite correctly there was an uproar, and the media had an absolute heyday with this because people in Britain were just very, very annoyed and angry and just sort of felt that it was a con.
While American consumers had never questioned purified water, in Britain, many thought that selling tap was a step too far. But the source of Dasani water was only the first chapter in Dasani's fall from grace.
What happened next was quite extraordinary. As if things weren't going badly enough for the Coca-Cola Corporation with its new Dasani brand, it was discovered that there was bromate in the water.
Coca-Cola is recalling its entire range of 500,000 bottles of Dasani bottled water from the British market. The move comes after levels of the chemical bromate were found to exceed legal levels.
Now, bromate is a naturally occurring substance, but it's carcinogenic. And the worst thing of all is that it didn't have to be there because it's a byproduct of the calcium chloride that the Coca-Cola Corporation was mixing with the Sig Cup water to create this wonderful Dasani. So it really was truly an own goal.
The discovery of bromate in Coke's Dasani water in the UK occurred just 5 weeks after its launch. While the brand continued apace in the US, in the UK, Dasani was dead. To many, a huge American multinational's attempt to sell us purified tap water with an apparent markup of over 3,000% was the ultimate indignity. It raised questions about the power of branding, the power of multinationals, and the power of the globalized market itself.
Bottled water is the most revealing substance for showing us how the global capitalist market works today. It tells us that we're no longer buying things for their use value. That, in a sense, we're buying choice. We're buying freedom. We're buying all kinds of insubstantial things.
For some of us, choice and freedom is worth the price we pay. But for others, it represents the excess and inequality of the modern world. A world where nearly 1 billion people have no access to clean water at all.
One thing we cannot lose sight of is the ultimate absurdity of the bottled water industry. Here we have a world where people are dying of thirst, where people lack clean water to feed their children, and we're spending billions of dollars and huge amounts of energy moving water from people who already have it to other people who already have it.
Recognizing this inequality was a small group of businessmen who saw an opportunity. If they could create a completely new brand of bottled water, they could subvert the industry from the inside. This they did with a brand they called One Water. Its success was to have a major influence on the industry as a whole.
The bottled water market in the UK is incredibly congested. There are some really big brand leaders out there, the Nestlés, the Danones of this world. But from our perspective, I didn't look at them as competitors. They don't sit in the same area that we do. I just wanted to go out and take a small percentage share of a bigger market that they happen to be sitting in as well.
That's how it starts. Where One Water different from other brands was in its simple proposition. There were to be no shareholders and no dividends, but instead 100% of their profits would go directly to African water projects.
We can't necessarily affect an industry, though we're trying very hard, but perhaps what we can do is repurpose some of the outcome of that industry for a better cause.
What the One Water brand was tapping into was a concept they called positive brand choice.
Positive brand choice is something I think that consumers have a real appetite for now. We're trying to tell them that by choosing our bottle of water, they could personally be responsible for bringing water to 10 African school kids for a day. And I think that's a really, really powerful proposition.
The consumer's positive brand choice was then turned directly into water projects for Africa.
The idea of play pumps came from something I read in one of the national newspapers, which celebrated this amazing invention, a pump powered by children's play that could pump water industrially into tanks and provide enough water for a whole community. And I thought that was ingenious.
The play pumps gave the consumers of One Water a reason for their positive brand choice, but they also benefited the major retailers.
Our proposition, in a business sense, provides British retailers with brilliant corporate social responsibility stories, but it doesn't cost them anything, because all I am asking them to do is to take our range of One products for the same price that they would have bought those products from other suppliers.
With the help of major retailers, One Water has now provided clean water to over 1.4 million people. But they have also influenced the wider industry.
Consumerism is changing, undoubtedly, and there is this growing ethical mega trend which is coming. We happen to be at the start of that, and I think what you'll find over time is that more and more companies will embed some kind of ethical bent into their strategy.
When you drink one, Africa drinks two.
I think the big multinationals have got a huge role to play in this. They can really lead this forward. I can't do that. I'm not big enough and powerful enough to do that.
One Water's annual turnover is less than £5 million, while the multinational group Danone's annual turnover stands at almost 13 billion. With this economic might, they are powerful enough to effect radical change. In 2005, they began to put their corporate muscle behind an ethical water campaign called Volvic 1 for 10.
A lot of smaller brands did ethical business, but we have marketing muscle and the distribution power, and we were happy to put it behind this program to involve more consumers and therefore give back more to society.
Volvic's strategy was simple. For every 1 litre bought, they would supply 10 litres of water to those most in need. With the 1 for 10 campaign, the Volvic brand funded 443 wells and gave access to clean water to 240,000 people. To some, this was a drop in the ocean.
On peut toujours faire plus, mais la vraie question, c'est de gérer des équilibres. Alors, est-ce que moi, patron de Danone, avec ma casquette qui travaille pour l'actionnaire, j'ai le droit d'arrêter les profits sur l'eau? Réponse, non. Est-ce que j'ai le devoir de donner tous les profits à l'actionnaire? Réponse, non. Donc il faut que je gère des équilibres. Alors je peux aussi ne rien faire. Il y a des gens qui font rien. Et en plus, qui se cachent derrière leur petit doigt en disant « Ah, je vais pas faire, c'est une goutte d'eau ». Et moi, je crois qu'une goutte d'eau, plus 2 gouttes d'eau, plus 3 gouttes d'eau, plus 4 gouttes d'eau, ça finit par faire une rivière. Donc c'est très facile de critiquer l'entreprise, la multinationale, et de dire « c'est rien du tout ». Mais les gens qui me disent ça, très souvent, je leur demande « et vous, vous faites quoi ?»
But as our consumer attitudes changed, the criticism of the industry only intensified. At the heart of the matter was what bottled water was actually made of. Oil and water, the world's 2 most precious resources in one neat package.
If you take all the oil that goes into making the bottles, and then you add in the oil that it takes to move the water into bottling plants and then to distribution centers, and then take the oil that is used sending trucks around to pick up all the empties, it is the equivalent of filling each bottle of water 1/5 of the way with oil. But bottled water has a water footprint as well as a carbon footprint. On average, it takes 3 liters of water to make every 1 liter of water that goes on a shelf. And that other water goes into making the bottles, into cooling the machinery at the plant, and into washing the bottling plant.
Attacked from all sides, the industry is fighting back, arguing that its critics are using false statistics.
Bottled water is one of the most efficient ways in order to get water to the consumer. As a matter of fact, you need 1.5 liters of water to produce 1 liter of bottled water. You need 3 liters of water to produce 1 liter of a soda. You need 6 to 7 liters of water to produce 1 liter of beer. So the most efficient way to get liquid is bottled water.
The industry is also addressing its environmental impact.
Le développement durable, c'est l'équilibre entre le social, l'économique et l'environnemental. On réduit le poids des bouteilles. On fait maintenant plus de 40%, je crois, de nos bouteilles avec du RPET, du PET recyclé. On a déjà planté je ne sais plus combien de millions de mangroves au Sénégal. Pour une raison simple, c'est que la mangrove, c'est comme les forêts tropicales, capture très bien le CO2. Ça ne veut pas dire que tout est parfait. Et au bout du bout, comme toute activité humaine, il restera un solde du CO2. Il y en aura toujours un.
The industry really wants to address these environmental concerns head on, and it's doing everything it can to help resolve them. It can only play a part in the wider picture, but it's certainly doing a lot to help deal with the problem. The environment matters to this industry because it's their future.
But in spite of the protestations of the industry, bottled water is now questioned by our society in a way unimaginable only a decade ago.
In the last few years, we're beginning to see a backlash against bottled water, a real perception that bottled water may not be necessary, that it may have environmental liabilities that we want to deal with. And for the first time in decades, the sales of bottled water have started to drop. And I think they've started to drop because people are increasingly aware of the liabilities of bottled water, of the alternatives to bottled water, of the economic costs of bottled water.
With these questions refusing to disappear in the West, and with the growth rates of the past a distant memory, the multinationals are now concentrating their efforts in the emerging world. Asia and South America have become the new targets for market domination. This is a battle for the future of the industry, and it is being waged, once again, by those old adversaries at Nestlé and Danone.
It's purely population, and where the growth is, you go, as the bank robber once said, why do I go to the banks? Because that's where the money is. And when you look at the developing world, whether it's Latin America or Asia, huge growth opportunity there. If you don't get in early, you'll lose out.
Nestlé's global brand, Pure Life, is perfectly adapted to these new markets. First launched in Pakistan, the brand was then given a global rollout. As a purified water brand, it could be adapted to any territory it entered, with a price point to match.
The water market exists everywhere, but I don't think we can assure that the consumers in Pakistan, in India, that they can afford to have only access to Evian or to have only access to Vittel. And we have an opportunity, we have an obligation to give them other opportunities which are more cost efficient and which allow them to have access to good hydration.
To do this, Nestlé Pure Life has capitalized on the Nestlé name to sell in countries where they already had significant market share with their other food products.
Water quality issues and purity and unadulterated water is an important issue around the world. The consumer, when they drink water, want to be sure that it's unadulterated. So when Nestlé entered the marketplace, they hit the sweet spot of the marketplace by calling it Nestlé Pure Life. They entered with the quality image of Nestlé, the name, the branding, and also We captured a very high share, and almost from the very beginning. It was a huge, huge success.
While Nestlé have utilized its global brand Pure Life to crack both the developed and emerging markets, its rival for global supremacy, Danone, have created specific brands for specific markets. In the rapidly expanding Far Eastern market, Danone's biggest hitter is Aqua. In South America, it is Villavicencio and Villa del Sur. And in one of the world's biggest bottled water markets, Mexico, it is Bonafont. The potential for growth in these markets is huge.
Un des relais de croissance du groupe Danone dans tous les métiers, ce sont les pays émergents. 60% de nos volumes sont dans des pays à très forte croissance. Et même aujourd'hui, plus de la moitié de la marge est aussi fait dans ces pays à très forte croissance. Donc le moteur de croissance du groupe au niveau du pôle haut, ce n'est pas une vision pour le futur, c'est une réalité d'aujourd'hui, ce qui nous donne une très grande force.
History is repeating itself in the world's emerging markets. Here, the global multinationals are utilizing some of the same strategies and techniques that have worked so successfully in the West. This is a market that is continuing to grow beyond all expectations.
As Mark Twain said, the news of my demise has been greatly exaggerated. I think that's an appropriate way of looking at what's happening with water. The need for water won't go away. The need for purity won't go away. The need for convenience won't go away. This product is just perfect.
So remember, have a drink.
By branding and marketing water, it has been transformed from a resource that many of us took for granted into a product that now makes billions for global multinational companies. But like all products, its success is driven by our demand.
Some people consider the bottled water industry as a marketing trick foisted upon consumers. I wish I was that good or had that much money. That is not a marketing feat. That's consumers voting with their purchases and their pocketbooks. Consumers make the decision every day about what they want to purchase in our society.
Over 40 years, bottled water has become a staple of the global market economy, feeding our insatiable demand for choice and convenience. From its yuppie beginnings with Perrier, it has capitalized on the health and wellness movement before emerging as the lifestyle accessory of our age. A market has been created for a product that we never even knew we needed.
Bottled water is the perfect late 20th, early 21st century product. It has become an indispensable prop in the way people present themselves. In fact, people are so attached to their water, you would think we were all dying of thirst. Everybody goes everywhere with a drink.
Years ago, priests, shaman, magicians blessed water, manipulated water, and gave it power. Today, it's corporations, government, celebrities, brands. But still, in the middle, you have a thirsty person trying to make a choice about what to drink.
And that'll be at the same time, 9 o'clock next Tuesday.
On Newsnight, we reveal how useless control orders can be. We wonder how much longer Germany will put up with reckless bankers and feckless governments. And Julian Fellows on why the British like stately home dramas.